During quarantine in 2020, I decided that with all of the insane free time that I had at my disposal, I was going to learn how to skateboard. I grew up playing the Tony Hawk games, and though I had decided to give learning the sport all the way back in the 90s a try, I wasn't really emotionally prepared for the genuine commitment that was needed to learn the ways of the board. Jumping forward to 2020, I felt that as a near 30-year-old man, at the time, and with seemingly never-ending amount of free time, I said, why not? I started watching skate videos on YouTube, learned foot placement, watched people eat shit, and said to myself, yeah, it looks hard, but I think I can do this. So I went online, bought some skater trainers, waited patiently for the package to arrive, threw those little fuckers on the wheels, and excitedly attempted an ollie. And I ate shit. Turns out skateboarding is just really fucking hard. It requires a lot of patience, a lot of practice, and some personal meditation. OLLI World is a game that came out very recently, and I think it taps into a gamified microcosm of a real skateboarding experience. The controls feel intuitive upon first glance, but can be hard to implement and execute. The game flow is incredibly smooth, but only after you have fallen 100 times, and the vibe is wonderful, but only after you have learned how to play. OLLI World is a runner game where the goal basically is just to get to the end of the stage by performing tricks and linking combos together, trying to get the highest score possible. And there are multiple challenges that you can strive for in each level, but really, all you have to do is just to get to the end of the level. In concept, it's incredibly basic and simple, but what OLLI World does with this simple concept is stretched pretty far, and not only in terms of the presentation, which is so seamlessly integrated with the style of the gameplay, that it's weird to think that this series hasn't always looked this sleek and stylish. The game is, as I alluded to earlier, deceptively difficult, especially with somebody already deeply indoctrinated by the incredibly arcadey Tony Hawk games. OLLI World feels just as arcadey, but somehow more simulation-based, using a control scheme that is a flick trick style of the skate games, where in order to do the tricks you have to flick the control stick in a manner relative to how the trick would be done in real life on a real skateboard, kinda. This translates the gameplay of OLLI World into a frenetic, fast-paced arcade simulation-style runner that is a euphoria-induced endorphin explosion. But that begs the question, where does the meditation come into play? Well, it really comes from the learning curve that I had to endure to find the flow state within OLLI World. When I began the game, my mind was filled with expectations. The predetermined mindset of the inherent flow state of skateboarding down to high speeds, landing crazy combos, manuals linking to tricks together, and the wind flowing through my hair as I skate across the walls held high in the air by big boisterous buzzing bees. But the unlearning of the controls of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games led me down a slow, arduous path where I made very little progress over a seemingly long time. I distinctly remember turning the game off after my second playthrough session with it and saying, this game's not really as good as I hoped it would be. But the alluring as of yet unobtained sensation of that mysterious flow state is what drew me in one more time. And now, as a side, I don't know if you've ever tried meditation before. It's something that I dabbled with very, very, very briefly. Meditation is a skill that I always tell myself that I'm going to get back into, especially because it's something that I think is needed in today's world of constant deadlines and iced coffee. The thing about meditation, in the brief window of time that I was doing it every day, is that you have this expectation of a serene, empty headspace, where you kind of like back away from the world and focus on nothing. And that's not really at all what the real-life practice is. The entire time, especially when you first start, is you learning to acknowledge the presence of nothing, but also the presence of thought that intrude in the way of your personal surrender to mental silence. When I started to practice meditation, specifically at the very beginning, I got very frustrated by the constant bombardment of thoughts that would just intrude on the attempts at mental dissipation. It wasn't the imagined experience that I had expected from the act of meditation. I thought I was doing something wrong, and felt like nothing I was doing was right. But then I discovered that I wasn't doing anything wrong, really. I hadn't been told that even experienced meditators experience the same issues that I was having. It just comes down to acknowledging the failure and starting again. Meditation is really about looking at yourself, your successes, but even more so your failures at a critical level and acknowledging them. But I think while it's a skill that requires a lot of patience and a lot of practice, whenever I try to meditate now, which is very sporadically and never on any consistent basis, that simple understanding of knowing to acknowledge your failure as part of the process is what makes both meditation and gaming such a rewarding experience. To an extent, meditation is kinda like riding a bike. You never really forget. But I guess in this case it's more like riding a skateboard. When I came back to OLLI World that third time, I had spent a lot of my in-between time thinking about the game and the pitfalls that I was falling into. A lot of it was dealing with the intrusive, ingrained intuition of the Tony Hawk game's controls, and fully coming to grip with the game's intended controls and the game's intended flow. At first I was so concerned with specific tricks and trying to master the game's trick list that I wasn't allowing myself to surrender to the game's flow state. But once you do, nailing tricky jumps and landing 56 trick combos will become second nature. And the music backing your downhill runs, which is an incredibly serene playlist of lo-fi chill hop beats to eat shit to, it helps provide the zen-like atmosphere despite the frenetic pace of the gameplay. And when you can just sit beside yourself and let OLLI World into your subconscious, the game's tricky levels become a focused meditation on the feeling of flow state. It's a fantastic experience and one you should definitely give a try, especially if you miss the enjoyable arcadey style of the Tony Hawk games or even the more simulation-based gameplay of the skate games. There's a little bit of something for everyone here, but just know that you may need to take a step back, recognize your failures, and then press on into fun.